Today, I want to talk about one of the most underrated and underdeveloped skills in coding, and that's reading the documentation. Now, before you get upset with me and say, hey, here he go talking about the same thing everyone else does, I get it. Documentation is not very exciting. They don't feel like coding. You would much rather be doing something with your fingers and actually coding. But the truth of the matter is that learning to read in documentation is a genuine superpower, and it can take you very far in your developer's career. So in this video, I want to talk about all things pertaining to the documentation, how you can better utilize them so that you can continue to progress your programming and coding career. So early on in your developer's journey, whenever you get stuck, what do you typically do? You go straight to Google, Stack Overflow, YouTube, ChatGPT, find the answer that you're looking for, copy it, paste it into your code, tweak it until it works, and then you'll continue to move on because everything is working. And hey, I get it. I've been there. I've done that as well too. But here's the problem. You never really build that independency that you need, and you're always relying on someone else's explanation to resolve your issue. The documentation, on the other hand, is going to be that source of truth. It's not just random advice that you may find within the manual. It's where you can actually learn and get a deep understanding of how this framework or program actually works so that you can implement it and you'll be able to build upon what it is that you're looking to do. The reason it's so underrated is because not everyone takes the time to read and utilize it, because the answer that you're looking for typically is always within the documentation. We're just looking for the fastest way to get that answer so we can move on and get back to building our project. Most people tend to avoid the documents, but as a developer, you have to learn to lean in and utilize it because that's going to be that single source of truth. And it's going to be the fastest way that you can enhance and develop your coding skill set. So think of it like you just purchased a piece of furniture from IKEA. If you open up the box and just dumped all of the pieces on the ground and attempted to put the chair together, it may actually work. You may actually put it together and you may have something that you could sit in, but it might wobble. There may be additional pieces left over. And your significant other is probably going to ask you, hey, is this chair safe? Are you sure you know what you're doing? And then now you're going to begin to question yourself if it is truly safe and if it's truly something that you can utilize. But you know what? The instructions are right there next to you, but we never take the time to actually look at them. If we just take a look at what the pictures are showing, how they connect, and say, hey, this makes sense, I'm going to put it together and continue to go along with it. Well, the documentation is actually there to help you make sure you put it together the right way, help you understand why you're connecting the pieces together that you're connecting, and help you build something sturdy and something that you'll be proud of. Well, that's the exact same thing in coding. That's what the documentation is there for. Now, to be honest with you, the documentation can feel overwhelming and intimidating at first. It's typically a lot to read and a lot to absorb. The words and the terminology used, you may not 100% understand because you're probably just getting started yourself. And sometimes it may feel as if it was written by a robot or someone that's not a human. But here's the trick. You don't necessarily want to read the documentation like a book. You want to kind of follow it like a map, if you will. When you're lost, you don't necessarily memorize every street name. You kind of memorize landmarks and, hey, I turn here, or hey, I'm going to be looking for this as my landmark. You kind of get familiar with patterns, and that is your guide to help get you to your destination. Well, you're going to do the exact same thing with coding. You don't need to necessarily know every piece of terminology. You kind of want to use the documentation to kind of guide you through your project so that you can get over that hurdle that you may have, or you can implement that new feature that you may not be aware of. Remember, with the documentation, you don't need to understand every single term. You just need to understand how the problem is solved, and more importantly, recognize the pattern that's needed in order to solve the problem so that you can accomplish the things that you're looking to get done. So I'll give you an example. So when I first started learning React, I was constantly Googling how to update state, how to handle forms, how to use effect, what is use memo. But then one day I actually said, you know what, I'm going to force myself to sit down and read the React documentation so I can get a better understanding of how it works under the hood. Because for me, I realized that my learning skill is not necessarily just following direction, but understanding the whys behind what it is that I'm doing. And then once I sat down and read the documentation and explained things to me, I found that every single question that I had was already being explained in the documentation. And then I became a lot more comfortable with it and started to explain it to others so that it not only taught me the true understanding of what it is that I was learning, but I was able to articulate it to someone else so that they could digest it to help enhance their learning experience. And then at that point on, it kind of clicked for me. I realized that I didn't need a blog post. I didn't need to follow a YouTube tutorial. Everything that I needed to do was basically in the documentation. And as I ran into concepts that I didn't understand, just take a few minutes, Google it, get a better understanding of it, and then keep moving forward. From that point on, I stopped wasting several hours watching a bunch of tutorials to build a project and started learning straight from the source itself. I'm telling you, once you get a better understanding of how to read the documentation, you're going to realize that your development experience is that much faster. And you're going to start to realize that you don't have the same amount of time or patience to sit there and watch someone else explain every coding concept to you. You're going to find that your time is better utilized by you just diving in and jumping straight into code yourself. Of course, after you've done some planning first. So here's another way to kind of think about it. The documentation is like the owner's manual for your car, right? If your car starts to make some weird noises, you could watch a bunch of different random videos to say, hey, what exactly is causing this? What did they do to fix it? And will this work for my vehicle? Or you could just go into your glove compartment, grab that owner's manual, flip to the appropriate page, and then get a better understanding of how the lights are set up, what noises actually mean, what you should be looking for, and where to start in the event you want to resolve the issue that you're having with your car. If you notice the difference in the two approaches, one is going to give you a random answer utilizing a video or a different source. But if you go straight to the actual documentation itself, that's going to give you that exact answer that you're looking for and the perfect starting place based upon your car and the documentation, the owner's manual that was written specifically for your car. Notice the difference there? So now you may be wondering, how exactly do you get better at reading the documentation? Well, here's some things that work for me, and I would suggest to maybe try these and tweak these because they could be beneficial for you. Don't try to read the entire documentation from front to back. Pick one feature that you're curious about or that you're learning about and start with that section, then look to implement it. Follow the examples. Most of the documentation are going to have code snippets that kind of give an example of what it is that you need to implement. Copy them, run them, see what happens, see how it works, experiment with it so that you get some hands-on practice, and then look to implement it into your code. I can assure you that it's going to stick that much better once you get your hands on it, once you practice it, once you do a couple things with it and you learn exactly how it works. And then finally, I would say use the documentation as your first stop, not your last stop. Before you Google, before you use ChatGPT, open the documentation. Even if you don't fully understand them, take a few minutes and maybe Google or get a better understanding of the term that you may not be familiar with. But you're starting to train your brain to use that as your official source. And the more you become familiar with it, the easier it's going to be to digest and understand some of those concepts that may not be as familiar to you. So some things I want you to take away from this video is that anyone can learn a framework by watching a tutorial, but developers that actually thrive are the ones that can pick up any tool, any library, any new language just by reading the documentation. That's where you're going to really get your growth. Following this process is going to help you continue to grow your developer's career. And because tech changes so fast, not everyone has an opportunity to put a video up on how exactly it works. That's where your skill set in reading the documentation and getting the understanding of it is what's going to enhance you and allow you to pick up things much faster. So the next time you're stuck before you run to Google or Stack Overflow, go ahead and give the documentation a shot. It might feel slower. It might feel like you're not making as much progress, but I can assure you, the more and more you do this, the more and more comfortable you'll get with it. And then you'll find yourself becoming a lot more efficient and self-reliant versus relying on tutorials to kind of help you with everything. So let me know in the comment section, what was the first project you built strictly off the documentation without following someone else's tutorial, and how did it turn out? And if you enjoyed today's video, feel free to give me a like, consider subscribing. Let me know what you'd like to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.